Autumn, 1942. The fate of the entire war is being decided on the banks of the Volga. Stalingrad is burning. The streets are littered with the rubble of buildings, mangled vehicles, rusty beams, and bricks blackened with soot. The earth trembles from tank attacks and bombings. The air is heavy with soot and dust. Every meter of this city is soaked in blood. Every house, every basement has been turned into a fortress. There is no home front here, only the front lines. Among those who stood to the death at the walls of the Krasny Oktyabr factory was sailor Mikhail Panikakha. He was born to a simple peasant family in the village of Mogilev, in the Dnipropetrovsk region. He spent his childhood like many others, working in the fields, helping his parents, and hard labor from an early age. He grew up calm, hard-working, and persistent. These qualities later saved his life and gave him the strength to do what almost no one else is capable of. When Mikhail became an adult, he was drafted into the Red Army. He was assigned to the Pacific Fleet. Service at sea forged his character. Constant worries, storms, physical exertion, and strict discipline. Fellow sailors recalled that Panikakha was a quiet man, never one to mince words, but confident and calm in any situation. He didn't seek glory, he simply did his job. When the Great Patriotic War began, he, like many sailors, asked to be sent to the front. He wanted to be where the fate of the country was being decided. His request was granted, and he found himself in the 193rd Rifle Division, in the 883rd Rifle Regiment, with the rank of senior seaman serving as deputy squad commander. Thus, the sailor became an infantryman and found himself in the very center of one of the fiercest battles in human history. By the fall of 1942, units of the division were taking up defensive positions on the right bank of the Volga, near the Krasny Oktyabr plant. This plant produced steel, armor, and equipment blanks, and now it had itself become a battlefield. Here, the interests of both sides converged. If the Germans managed to break through to the crossings near the plant, they could completely cut off the city's defenders' supply lines. Therefore, every day, this area became the target of air, artillery, and tank strikes. The soldiers literally lived under the open sky, in craters, basements, and dilapidated workshops. Day and night didn't exist. Only the constant noise of battle, the roar of cannons, the screech of mines, the crackle of machine guns. Food was scarce, water was often dirty, and the wounded had to be treated right at their positions. But no one surrendered. In such conditions, only the most resilient survived. And Panikakha was one of them. He knew how to remain calm when others thought it was impossible to continue. On October 2nd, 1942, at dawn, another attack began. German tanks, supported by infantry, advanced on the 1st Battalion sector where Mikhail was stationed. These were heavy vehicles, capable of crushing defenses in minutes. The ground shook beneath their treads, the roar of their engines reverberating in their chests. Behind them were lines of machine gunners covering the armored vehicles. The soldiers of the 883rd Regiment already knew what this meant. If the tanks got through, no one could hold them back. Panikakha's unit had almost no anti-tank weapons left. Several anti-tank rifles were damaged, and ammunition was running low. Mikhail had only 2 bottle-cap incendiary devices, the so-called Molotov cocktails. The mixture was prepared right at the factory from gasoline, kerosene, and additives to help it adhere to metal. Panikakha likely understood that this weapon was almost hopeless against a tank. But there was no other choice. He took up a position closest to the front line. When the first tank came into line of sight, Mikhail rose and threw one bottle. It flew in an arc. But at that very moment, an enemy bullet struck it. The mixture exploded in his hands. Everything around him lit up with flames. Fuel splashed onto his clothes. The flash blinded him. The flames instantly engulfed his body. Anyone else at that moment would likely have fallen to the ground, trying to put out the flames. But Panikakha did otherwise. He didn't stop. He didn't run back. He rose, clutching the remaining bottle, and walked forward, straight toward the tank. A burning man, bottle in hand, advanced toward the armored vehicle. The fire consumed everything alive. His clothes melted off his skin, but he kept going. When the tank came close, Mikhail rushed toward it and smashed the last bottle against the engine grill. A second later, the tank burst into flames. The engine caught fire, and fire tore through the hull. The crew didn't have time to escape. The vehicle froze. At that very moment, the other German tanks began to retreat, fearing a new attack. For several minutes, the battle froze. The Germans were confused, unable to comprehend what had happened. It was at that moment that the soldiers of the 883rd Regiment launched a counterattack. They drove the enemy from their positions, destroyed several tanks, and up to 40 enemy soldiers and officers. This small victory allowed them to hold the area near the factory and prevent a breakthrough. Mikhail Panikakha's body was found later, charred and motionless, next to a burned-out tank. He died, but he saved dozens of others. His heroic deed became known throughout the front. After the battle, his comrades recalled that Mikhail never sought to stand out. He wasn't a commander. He didn't hold any official position.